One of the most important things you can do to enhance your relationship, your sexual relationship, that is, I want to say, is to talk about it. From research, we know that of the couples who do not talk about sex, only 9% report that they have a satisfying sex life. On the other hand, couples who say that they talk openly about sex report that they have a satisfying sex life. So the more you learn to communicate openly with each other about your sexual relationship, the more you'll enjoy sex and also strengthen your relationship overall. I want to suggest that there are two types of conversations about sex, and one is the exploratory conversation, which I'm talking about in this lesson. And these are conversations that happen outside of a sexual encounter. The purpose is to deepen your understanding of your experience and learn to talk openly about what you want in your sexual relationship. Here are the kinds of questions that you might discuss. What is working in our sexual relationship? What is not working? Are we giving ourselves enough time to feel aroused, or does our sex feel rushed? How pleasurable is it for each of us? How often do we like sex? Where and when? How present and engaged are we? Is it always the same, or do we bring any variety in terms of time and location and technique in order to enhance our experience? Who usually initiates, and how does this person initiate? And what would make the experience more pleasurable for each of us? And what are our fantasies about a great sexual experience? In short, you can talk about anything that you have on your mind or need to discuss during these exploratory conversations. In truth, couples have different desires and thoughts about what's fulfilling, even acceptable during sex. Sharing your scripts is a way to find greater unity and compatibility. Talk about what kind of sex you desire, as well as how, when, and where. And please know that there's nothing that's off limits in sex as long as one of you isn't imposing on the other and you can agree about what's fulfilling. Well, learning to have these conversations is a way to talk about your scripts and what you both feel good about. Lots of couples avoid such conversations. Some people assume they shouldn't need to talk about their sex life. They assume that lovemaking should come naturally if they love each other. Other couples are hesitant to talk because they don't want to rock the boat. These conversations can make us feel vulnerable, and we don't want to offend our partners or create conflict. So it's easy to avoid talking about sex altogether or be direct, indirect, I mean to say, and vague as we communicate. But avoiding doesn't help you improve your sex life, nor does it bring you closer as a couple. By learning to talk openly, you'll strengthen your marriage and you'll experience more pleasure during sex. So I'm going to offer you a few guidelines to make it easier to have these conversations. One key to talking about sex is timing. You don't want to spring a surprise on your partner by jumping right into a conversation. It's better to let him or her know that you'd like to talk. Find a time and a setting that will work for both of you when you can be alone and have a private conversation. A second key to these conversations is to let go of assumptions. And in fact, a very important part of these conversations is to be clear with each other so that you don't make assumptions or try to read one another's minds. Too often partners think that their partner should know what they want or like during sex, but without communicating it clearly. And on the other hand, you should not assume that you know what your partner likes or wants. You need to ask and let them tell you. Because it's difficult for couples to talk openly about sex, they often rely on assumptions which may or may not be correct. Too many spouses either expect their partner to know what he or she likes, or they think that it doesn't count if they have to tell them. If she really loved me, she'd know what I want, is an unreasonable expectation, as we've talked about in the past. After all, you are responsible for your experience, so you need to be explicit about what sex means for you, what works, what brings you pleasure, and so on. And likewise, you need to allow your partner the same right to let you know what he or she likes, wants, and so on. Another key to making these conversations helpful is to initiate the conversation with a soft startup. As I said earlier in the program, most conversations end as they begin. If they start in a harsh tone, they'll likely end in a harsh tone. If they start softly and respectfully, it's much easier to maintain a respectful tone. So remember that your purpose is to help both of you feel closer and more loving. You don't want to blindside your partner with criticism or a blaming comment out of the gate. It's more helpful to start your conversation by stating your intent to find ways to make your sex life better for both of you. A fourth key is to make sure your conversation is two-way. Even if you initiate a conversation because you have something that you want to bring up, you need to remember to share airtime. It's going to go better if it's a back and forth with both of you feeling free to share your thoughts and your feelings. This requires both of you to disclose your point of view and also listen and inquire into the point of view of your partner. You build more intimacy if your conversation is a dialogue, not a monologue. However, that said, another key is to be a good listener. Even though most conversations are going to be two-way, you shouldn't be so anxiously waiting for your turn to speak that you're not really hearing your partner. Take time to understand their point of view. And sometimes, frankly, this can feel threatening. Maybe your partner says something and you're tempted to take offense. Commit instead to really hear them out. Likewise, if your partner is sharing a desire that is new for you, you might want to react. You might feel reactive or defensive about it. But can you be a safe place for them to fully express themselves? You'll get your turn too. And occasionally, one partner or the other will need more airtime because something happened maybe that upset them and they need to go deeper. Perhaps your lovemaking brought up a bad memory from the past. These are times in which one of you will spend more time in a listening mode, encouraging your partner to talk about their feelings and experience. A sixth guideline is to be patient. Talking about sex can be hard because so many couples have lots of ambivalence and shame associated with it. So each time you enter into a conversation, think of it as exploration more than problem solving. You don't have to come to resolution about everything that you bring up as long as you're making it safe to open up and talk. Don't think of it as a single conversation. This is instead an ongoing dialogue that will continue over many months and years. The fact that you're talking is more important than trying to resolve everything. Take the long view. Well, I'm going to leave you with an application assignment. It's a process to encourage further exploration of your sexual relationship. I'm inviting you and your partner to write down your thoughts about a fulfilling experience. Write down what would happen before, during, and after a sexual encounter. And this isn't your ultimate fantasy, by the way, or it doesn't have to be. It can be just simply an example of a meaningful encounter for you. And if doing this together, I then encourage you to share your thoughts with your partner during some exploratory conversation. As you know, I said that there were two kinds of conversations about sex, and we've been talking about an exploratory conversation. In the next lesson, I'll talk about an intimacy conversation, and by this I mean how you communicate with each other during sex. See you in the next lesson.